If someone just told you that your child has a serious medical diagnosis, there's a good chance your mind is racing right now. You might be wondering if the future you imagined for your family just totally disappeared. You might be afraid your world is about to get a lot smaller. You might be afraid that you'll be losing friendships or your sense of normalcy, maybe even parts of the person you used to be. You might be wondering if everything from this moment forward is going to be defined by hospitals, hard decisions, lots of things you don't want to have to carry. If thoughts like that are running through your mind right now, I want you to hear something before we go a moment further. Yes, a diagnosis like this will change your life, but it does not have to erase it. And you are not walking this road by yourself, not even close. Right now, you might feel like the ground just disappeared under your feet. I know, I've been there. Maybe you're sitting in a hospital room hearing words you've never heard before. Or maybe you're pretending to listen to a doctor while your brain is just spinning out of control. Maybe it's the middle of the night and you've been searching the internet for hours, trying to understand a world you didn't even know existed yesterday, and quite frankly, you didn't want to. Your mind may be racing with questions you don't have answers to yet. What will our life look like now? Will our family belong in the world we knew before this? Will I even recognize the person I am after all of this? If those questions are sitting heavy in your chest right now, you are not alone. The moment after a diagnosis like this can feel like the life you were building suddenly split in two. There's the life you thought you were living, and suddenly the life you've just been handed. A few years ago, I found myself standing in the exact same moment. It felt like everything we thought our future would be had suddenly shattered. My daughter was diagnosed with Edwards syndrome, trisomy 18, and overnight it felt like our entire world shifted. Not just shifted, blew up. Here we were, feeling forced to imagine a life we'd never even seen before. Suddenly, we were speaking a language we didn't understand. And if you've entered this world recently, you probably already know what I mean and what that feels like. Overnight, you start hearing these acronyms thrown at you like NG or OG tube, SATs, pulmonology, cardiology, and at some point you realize you're using them in sentences like you've secretly been attending medical school at night, except you haven't. You're just a parent of a medically complex child. And if I could go back and sit down with the version of myself from those earliest days, there's one thing I would want her to know. Yes, a diagnosis like this will change your life, but it does not have to erase it. You will still laugh. You will still build friendships. You will still find purpose and meaning in ways you may not be able to see yet. Right now, you might not even know what questions to ask or how to fit all these pieces together. You might not know what kind of parent you want to become inside of this new reality. And that's not failure. That just means no one's handed you a map yet. And that's what this space is for. This podcast exists for parents raising medically complex, severely disabled children. It's a place where the hard feelings can exist right next to the hopeful ones, where the thoughts you were afraid to say out loud can finally be spoken and accepted, and where we learn how to navigate this world together. Because if you're standing at the beginning of this road, or even years into it and still feeling a bit lost, you do not have to walk it alone anymore. Welcome to a little extra momming. Your child is not forgotten. You are not broken. And your family's story is still being written. I want to say something gently, but honestly. If you're feeling scared right now, if part of you is grieving the life you thought your family would have, if you feel anger, confusion, or even moments where you catch yourself thinking, I wish this wasn't happening, that does not make you a bad parent or a bad person. Love and grief can live in the same heart. Hope and fear can live in the same heart. And nothing you are feeling right now disqualifies you from being the parent your child needs. If anything, it just means you're human. For my faith-based listeners out there, I want to speak gently to your heart here for a moment. It is not spiritually or biblically wrong to feel afraid while walking through something deeply hard. Scripture is actually full of people who loved God deeply and still carried fear, grief, and uncertainty. I want to reassure you, faith has never meant the absence of human emotion. It means that even in the middle of fear, we are not abandoned. So if you hope and fear right there at the same time, let that tension be held, but not disqualify you as a parent. It does not disqualify you as a believer. Sometimes it simply means you're standing in the middle of something really heavy, but still choosing to keep going. Before we keep going, I want to speak for just a moment to those of you who aren't medically complex families, but one maybe sent this to you. Here's the thing. If someone shared this with you today, there's a good chance they're trying to explain their world and they don't quite know how to do it. Because life with a medically complex kid can be really hard to describe to people who don't live inside of that experience. From the outside, it can look like a lot of hospital visits and medical equipment and doctor's appointments and overwhelming, scary things. But from the inside, it's love. It's exhaustion. It's also fierce protecting. It's learning a language you didn't ask to learn, not because you wanted to, but because someone you care about needs you to understand it. Sometimes the best way we know how to say, this is what my life looks like now, is simply to send you a conversation like this. So if you are the friend listening because someone you care about sent you here, I'm really glad you're here too. Now, just a few years ago, my daughter Ellie was born with trisomy 18, as I've mentioned. Overnight, it felt like the entire trajectory of our life had shifted. Before we go any further, I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like, how we first heard the news about Ellie. Because when people find this podcast, a lot of times it's because someone told them about our story. And if that's you, I want you to know what that moment actually looked like for us. When we first learned something might be wrong, we didn't know it was trisomy 18 yet. We didn't know which thing it was. The doctors were saying that it could be something like Down syndrome or this Edwards syndrome. We didn't know the difference. We know now they're two very different roads in some ways. I remember sitting in my living room with our midwife when we were talking through what the doctors were seeing about Ellie in her anatomy scan. Our midwife, Susie, she was calm. She was steady. She was the kind of person who could sit in a storm with you without trying to rush it away. That was really important because I, on the other hand, completely fell apart. I mean, fully, embarrassingly, uncontrollably sobbing. The kind of crying where you can barely breathe and your whole body is shaking. Have you ever done that? I remember doing the weirdest thing. I remember apologizing through tears to my midwife, saying, I'm so sorry. I'm making such a scene. Which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it, because I was in my own living room hearing very unexpected news. But I felt so out of control in that moment that I was almost embarrassed by my own reactions. I don't know if you can relate, but it felt like someone had just told me that the entire life I thought I was about to have was just gone. Not just the baby that I had imagined, everything, the whole world. I remember thinking about birthdays down the road, school, vacations, all the normal things parents assume are going to happen. And suddenly it felt like someone had just picked up all of that and tossed it in the garbage can and marked it with a question mark. I was terrified, not just scared for Ellie, but scared for my family, my marriage, my toddler, who I already had. I was scared for what life might look like if this really was Edward syndrome. And I want to say something really clear here, because I know some of you listening right now might be in that exact same moment right now. If you felt devastated when you heard the news, if you cried, if you panicked, if your mind went straight to the worst possible place, that does not make you a bad parent. It makes you a human being who heard something enormous about your child. I loved Ellie already completely, but in that moment, I was grieving a future I thought we were about to lose. And the truth is, a lot of parents feel that way in the beginning. Most people just don't say it out loud. What I didn't know then, what none of us can really see in those first hours or days, is that the story isn't finished with the diagnosis. That moment feels like the end of the world. But it isn't the end of the story. Not even close. One of the reasons this podcast exists is because of something I noticed very quickly after Ellie's diagnosis. When you enter the world of medical diagnoses and complex pregnancies, people tend to do one of two things. Some people overwhelm you with information, articles, statistics, medical explanations, support groups that go 20 layers deep into a world you didn't know existed. And suddenly you're submerged in an entirely new universe with its own language and acronyms and databases about treatment plans and outcomes. And you're expected to somehow catch up on all of this overnight. And not only that, but have opinions about it and know where you stand on all of these things. Then you have people that go the other direction. Some people go the other direction. They try to jump straight to encouragement. They want to reassure you. They want to show you all the beautiful stories. They want to prove that everything can still be meaningful and full of joy. And that's wonderful. While that usually comes from a very kind place, sometimes it can feel disorienting too. Because when you've been handed a diagnosis, you're not necessarily ready to be dropped into a completely new alien world and be told to feel okay about it simply because there's so many other aliens already there. What most parents actually need, what I needed in the beginning, was something a lot simpler. I needed a way to walk from where I was right then in that moment into wherever the new normal was going to be. And that's what this space is for. This podcast isn't here to dump information on you, although we will make a lot of information available. It isn't here to pretend that the road you're on is easy either, although we are going to talk about finding a new normal and normalizing things we once thought were completely out of this world. It's here to help shape the experience you're walking through. Sometimes that means putting words to feelings that are hard to explain. Like when a stranger notices your pregnant belly and smiles and says, "Oh, congratulations, aren't you excited?" And you smile back politely while inside you're carrying fear and uncertainty and maybe even some skepticism. You have absolutely no idea how to wrap all of that up into one expression. Moments like that can feel incredibly lonely. Sometimes what people need most is simply to hear somebody else say, "Yeah, that feeling is real. You're not strange for having it." Other times, the challenges become very practical. Sometimes it means welcoming your newborn into the world inside a NICU. Now, I get a lot of families spend time in the NICU. Sometimes babies just come a little too early, or they need a little help with some basic things, taking their first breaths or getting feedings to work out in the very beginning. In most of those situations, the expectation is pretty clear. Doctors are helping a baby get stronger so they can go home and go on to live a pretty normal, long, healthy life. But when your child has a serious diagnosis, especially if it happened before birth or there was a question mark in their development, the experience can look very different. You're still in the NICU. There are still doctors and nurses all around you. There are machines beeping, but the conversations can sound pretty different. Instead of talking about when your baby will be strong enough to go home, they might be having conversations with you most new parents never imagined facing. Questions about how much care you want to pursue. Questions about comfort. Sometimes even conversations about whether your baby will even leave the hospital at all. In some families, it can even mean navigating hospice care for your newborn. And that creates a whole kind of emotional isolation that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. Because from the outside, it may look like you're just another family with a baby in the NICU, which is hard enough. But inside, you're carrying a completely different set of questions about the future. So this podcast exists to help create a pathway through experiences like that. It's not a perfect roadmap, because every child and every family is different. But a pathway, nonetheless, through the emotional terrain that comes with serious and rare diagnoses. A place where we can talk honestly about the things families actually face. Fear, unexpected decisions, the strange moments that no one prepares you for. And also the moments of beauty that show up in places you never expected to find them. If you're walking this road right now, you are not strange for feeling whatever it is you feel. You are not alone in the questions you're asking. And you don't have to figure it all out today. We're just going to take it one step at a time, together. Yes, your life looks different, and it will look different. But different does not automatically mean smaller. I want you to hear this very clearly. You are not required to have your child's future figured out today, or yours for that matter. You are not required to make perfect decisions, especially in the early days. You are allowed to learn as you go, to feel uncertain, and you're allowed to love your child deeply while still feeling very afraid of the unknown, whatever comes next. Nothing about that makes you a bad parent. Right now, it may feel like you're fumbling your way forward, like you're learning to navigate an entirely new world in the dark. And honestly, that's a pretty normal place to start. Some days you might feel like you're just feeling your way through things one tiny step at a time. And on others, you might feel a little steadier, like you're slowly floating forward. And maybe one day further down the road, you'll realize you've grown a confidence you never expected. So wherever you are on that spectrum, fumbling, floating, maybe flying, you still carry the authority to shape the course of your family's life one day at a time. You don't have to see the whole road ahead. You just have to take the next step and the one after that. If you're willing, I would love to start helping you learn the language of this world, one small, understandable piece at a time. You're not lost. You're just learning a road you didn't know existed yet. And it's okay to learn while you walk. If you're walking through something hard right now, you do not have to know how it ends. You only need to take the next step and the one after that. And if today feels like survival instead of strength, that still counts as love. Some days loving your child looks like bravery and advocacy and confidence. And some days it simply looks like getting up again tomorrow and trying one more time. Both of those count. Both of those are real love. You don't have to be strong all the time to survive this. You just have to keep showing up. And if no one has told you this today, you're doing better than you think. A diagnosis like this will absolutely change your life, but it does not have to erase it. If another parent comes to mind while you're listening to this, send this episode to them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can give each other is a reminder that we're not the only ones walking this road. If this one thing is all you take from our time together today, I want you to hear this. You are not broken, and your family's story isn't over. One step at a time, that's how we keep going. This is a little extra momming, and I'm really glad you're here.